Partisan swings in the House in modern American history. The Republicans picked up 63 seats in that first midterm after President Obama was elected in the 2010 midterms. And when you win a majority, even if it's just a small majority, you of course get to take control of all the committees in the House. You don't just get the leadership of the House writ large. All the committees that had previously been chaired by Democrats, those Democratic chairs had to hand over their gavels to new Republican chairs. And when that sort of a transition happens, it is a feeding frenzy in Washington. It is power play writ large. There's lots of jockeying among members of Congress for the best jobs. Often the chairmanships are won by senior members of the House, people who've been around for a long time and have made a lot of friends and doled out a lot of favors, and they have a lot of chits to cash in with their colleagues. But when the Republicans took over the House with that big win in 2011, 2010 midterms, they're all getting sworn in 2011, the Republican member of Congress who managed to snag the best chairmanship of all, the chairmanship of the Budget Committee, best gig in Congress, the person who would be responsible for crafting the Republicans' economic alternative to President Obama's proposals. That guy was a pretty young guy, just 40 years old at the time. Not one of these old lions of Congress who'd been, raising money for all his or her colleagues for decades. It was this 40-year-old guy who got that plum job not because he'd been around forever and had lots of favors to trade, but because he was seen as such a quality guy. He was seen as such an up-and-comer. And specifically, he had a really detailed, really specific plan. He said that he had the plan for the Republican Party to finally get American debt and deficits under control because he knew how to do it. You put him in charge, he would do it. His reason for living was to cut the debt. It was what he dreamed about. It was what he lived for. It was his life's work. It was all he cared about. It was definitely one thing that he knew how to do better than anybody else. And he had dreamy blue eyes, and he looked awesome alongside blown-up charts and graphs.
The facts are very clear. The United States is heading toward a debt crisis. The only solutions will be truly painful for us all. That doesn't have to be our future. The way we respond to this challenge will ultimately define our generation. We can choose a path to prosperity. Let's take a look at how we can do it.
So many bad men. It's hard to choose a favorite.
Our debt as
but
a share
this
of
Tim
the
Burton
economy
classic
is
will always have a
too
special
high.
place in my place.
Look at where it's going.
Before this movie, the last
These are
time people saw
actually pretty
Batman, he was played by
conservative
Adam West in the
estimates. Here's
60s.
what would happen
But the
under
moment
our
Michael
proposed
Keaton put
budget,
on the cowl and
what we're calling the path to prosperity. As you can see, we won't come anywhere close to the tipping point, and we'll pay off the debt over time.
The House Republicans' budget man called for dramatic cuts and changes.
We put the nation on the path to actually pay off our national debt.
41-year-old Wisconsin Congressman Paul Ryan is going big compared to the White House budget laid out in February. The Republican plan over the next decade would cut government spending by $6 trillion, reduce the federal deficit by $4.4 trillion compared to the president's budget, according to the Congressional Budget Office.
Budget Chairman Congressman Paul Ryan, champion of urgent, deep cuts. A 40-year-old congressional rebel with a cause, and John Carl spent the day with him.
He's been given more power over the federal budget than anybody in Congress.
Hearing will come to order.
Paul Ryan, the Republican with the budget axe.
$23 million.
He's a little like the guy in the movie Dave, the accidental president who sets out to fix the budget line by line.
That's another $47 million. So this is good. We're doing good.
But in the movie, Dave only has to find $650 million in savings. Ryan wants to cut several trillion over the next 10 years.
I mean, how do you go in here and how do you find the kind of savings you want to find? And how do you get your arms
I've been reading these things since I was 22 years old. You literally go through it line by line. Direct loans, this is perfect. So direct loans, that's a new spending on autopilot that has no congressional oversight, and it gave the illusion that they were cutting spending.
That's the Paul Ryan party trick that he does with reporters. Open the U.S. budget to any page. I'll find you wasteful spending to cut on any page. Oh, look at this one. You thought your burping the alphabet routine was good, right? Or that thing you do with the chewing tobacco lid? No. Try opening the budget. Boom, I'd kill that. I mean, yes, there were party poopers out there who pointed out that in that example, in that televised interview, that one random thing Paul Ryan happened to pull out of the budget at random as an example of wasteful spending, that thing is actually something that saved the U.S. government billions and billions and billions of dollars, so cutting it would cost billions of dollars. But still, the idea that he had some sort of budget magic, that he was budget magic personified, it was so exciting. You just didn't want to reveal how the trick was done or that it didn't work. You just wanted to believe in the magic. The Beltway really wanted to believe in the magic. However you felt about Paul Ryan's actual grasp of actual numbers, by the very next year, that plan of his that he had unveiled was such orthodoxy for Republicans, and he was seen as such a serious policy guy by the mainstream press, that the following year, 2012, Republicans basically by consensus chose Paul Ryan as their vice presidential candidate to run with Mitt Romney. Because, yes, dreamy blue eyes and youthful fitness looked great alongside Mitt Romney, but also policy, right? He had that very, very serious plan. He was the policy guy.
In choosing Wisconsin Congressman Paul Ryan as his running mate, Mitt Romney has instantly remade his presidential campaign. Congressman Ryan, the energetic chairman of the House Budget Committee, is the Republican master of all aspects of federal spending, and he comes complete with his own detailed conservative fiscal plan to remake the role of the federal government in everything from Medicare and Medicaid to tax policy and agriculture subsidies. In naming Congressman Ryan, Governor Romney has transformed the presidential campaign into an ideological battle.
Ideological battle, because Republicans have picked, they called him the Republican master of all aspects of federal spending. There's a conservative activist named Grover Norquist, who's an anti-tax crusader. He said at the time that Republicans didn't actually even need Mitt Romney as a presidential candidate. Didn't matter who was at the top of the ticket. All they needed was that magic plan from the Republican master of all aspects of federal spending, Paul Ryan. Grover Norquist said at the time, quote, "We want the Ryan budget. Pick a Republican with enough working digits to handle a pen to become president of the United States. All we want is Paul Ryan's magic plan." Well, Paul Ryan did not become vice president in that campaign that he and Mitt Romney lost in 2012. But while Mitt Romney sort of disappeared for a while, and is now trying to just make his political comeback now, Paul Ryan kept rolling, and he ended up becoming Speaker of the House in 2015. And again, the prevailing view was this meant that the Republican Party would now be led by Mr. Policy, by the most capable, most devoted policy wonk in all the land. The man whose reason for living was to reduce deficits and the debt, and boy, does he know how to do it. Once he was Speaker, Paul Ryan started releasing these odd but sort of exciting videos about himself as Speaker. At the time that they made people think that maybe he was running for president in 2016, or maybe he just liked having videos of himself out there with soaring music and the sound of people applauding him.
How reassuring it would be if we actually fixed the tax code, put patients in charge of their health care, grew our economy, strengthened our military, lifted people out of poverty, and paid down our debt. The cynics will scoff. They'll say it's not possible.
Scoffing cynics who don't believe we will pay down our debt. Don't you know that Paul Ryan has been working on this since he was 22? He has the plan. He's going to bring down the debt. He's going to do all those things. The debt will disappear. This is who Paul Ryan is in American politics. And he's an important figure in American politics. But this is the founding mythology of Paul Ryan over his 20 years in Congress. And at the beginning of last year, his party finally took control of the White House and the Senate and the House, where he is in charge. And he has a huge majority in the House. He can do what he wants. And with that full control, they have enacted some of Paul Ryan's policies that he has been campaigning for 20 years. He's finally seen his fiscal plans come into existence. 2 days ago, we got the mathematical fiscal assessment of the result of those policies. The deficit is now going to shoot past $1 trillion by 2020. As a share of the American economy, the deficit is going to reach levels not seen since the economic collapse of 2008. Before that, the last time deficits were this big was World War II, because we were paying for a world war at the time. The debt is going to rise $13 trillion in the next 10 years. That report from the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office, that came out 2 days ago. Then this was this morning.
Today, I am announcing that this year will be my last one as a member of the House. To be clear, I am not resigning. I intend to full my served term as I was elected to do. But I will be retiring in January, leaving this majority in good hands with what I believe is a very bright future. I have accomplished much of what I came here to do.
Which part? You may or may not care about the debt and deficit. Some people care a lot about it. Some people don't care about it at all. But getting rid of the debt and the deficit, that is the origin story of why Paul Ryan exists in American politics. And why he's third in line to the presidency. After the president and the vice president, it's him. It's why he was put in charge of the budget for the Republicans, and why they ran him for vice president with Mitt Romney, and why they made him Speaker of the House. He will get rid of the debt. And then what he did with the power that they gave him once he got to enact his magic plan is that he's going to add $13 trillion to the debt. And Paul Ryan apparently looked at that report that came out on Monday afternoon and thought, well, my work here is done. I've pretty much done what I mean, again, you may or may not care about that as a policy issue, but I think if we're never going to look at this, if we're ever going to look at this, this is the time. The Beltway myth of Paul Ryan, which we have all been living through over the course of his political ascendance these past few years. The Beltway myth of Paul Ryan is the opposite of what Paul Ryan did, which should make us examine our myths. Whatever you think of Congressman Ryan, Speaker Ryan, whether you bought into the myth in the first place or not, it is inescapably true that he did the opposite. he failed at achieving the goals that he set for himself from day one, and that everybody cheered him on as being capable of achieving as a Republican Party leader. He did the opposite. And now he's leaving, saying he's pretty much done with what he wanted to do. He will be the second Republican House Speaker to quit in the space of 3 years. His predecessor, John Boehner, stepped down in October 2015. John Boehner's post-Congress life has seemed kind of awesome, actually. From what we know about it, it has mostly been him golfing and giving occasional interviews about how relieved he is to not be in terrible Congress anymore. He has occasionally sent out dispatches from his RV on the open road. He wears shorts when he drives. It's been kind of a low-profile retirement for the last Republican Speaker of the House who quit. But today turned out to be a really awkward day for everybody in the Beltway media to suddenly turn around and say, hey, I wonder what John Boehner is up to right now. We're having another House Speaker quit. What happened to the last one? Today ended up being a very awkward day for everybody to suddenly start wondering about John Boehner again, because early this morning, hours before anybody knew that Paul Ryan was going to announce that he too was leaving, John Boehner announced very early on Twitter today that he was joining the board of a weed company, like a marijuana company. John Boehner, former Republican Speaker of the House, chose this morning to come out of the closet as a brand new proponent of legal pot. Quote, I am joining the board of Acreage Holdings because my thinking on cannabis has evolved. Okay, I mean, we all know John Boehner as a proud cigarettes and red wine guy. This is new. When John Boehner shared his evolution, his marijuana evolution in that tweet before 7 a.m. this morning, I'm sure he didn't think it was going to be part of every single story about the biggest news in American politics today. But there you have it. Something for Paul Ryan to look forward to now that he's retiring to spend more time probably becoming a lobbyist. I mean, I would pay money to see them high together. At some point, that will probably happen. But it is no mystery why Paul Ryan might be wanting to get out of the way of the November elections this year. That Tea Party wave in 2010 in the first election after Obama was elected president, that was the wave election that made Paul Ryan budget chair. That was very big. Some of the people who watch these kind of trends for a living, they think this year could bring a Democratic wave that is even bigger than what we saw in 2010. Even if you don't believe that hype, and it is still a long way out before the election, It's already clear that it's going to be at least a sort of rough year for Republicans in election after election over the last few months, from state legislative seats to governorships, even to the U.S. Senate. Democrats have been doing way better than they did in 2016, or in some cases better than they've done in many election cycles going back many years. Democrats have won upset victories in traditionally conservative places. Hello, Alabama. There have been a number of instances where Democrats have still lost in very conservative places, but the percentage swing toward Democrats in those elections has nevertheless been huge. Just yesterday, we had a couple of specials. A Democrat won a Florida Senate race, state Senate race. She won her race by a 50-point margin. And yeah, that's a Democratic district in Florida, so maybe not surprising that a Democrat won. But Hillary Clinton crushed that district in 2016. Hillary Clinton won that district by 25 points. This is a 25-point swing further toward the Democrats in that race yesterday, a 50-point margin. Also yesterday, there was another special in Iowa. In Iowa, a Republican won a state Senate seat in a very red district, but that Republican won by 14 fewer points than Trump had won that district in 2016. So it's a 14-point swing in Democrats' direction, even in a race they could still hold on to. These kind of swings are real, and we've been seeing them for well over a year now. And if they persist, even at a fraction of what we're seeing now, they will make it very hard for Republicans this November. Not to mention the fact that every Republican in America will be running with Donald Trump as their party's standard bearer. Maybe Paul Ryan could have been the standard bearer before he quit, but it's going to be Donald Trump. And that will doubtless help some Republicans in some places that really love Donald Trump. At the rate things are going right now, though, it is hard to imagine what amount and what manner of scandal and legal peril may be hanging over Trump and his administration by the time voters are actually going to the polls and voting in November. We just learned today that as of last week, the Russia Legal Defense Fund for the Trump campaign staffers and Trump administration staffers is open for business and taking donations. So maybe that could be kind of a joint election message. Maybe that could be like, hey, vote for me, or if you don't have time to go out and vote, please could you contribute to the Russia Legal Defense? Happy election season, GOP. We'll be right back.
The all-new 2019 Infiniti QX50, the most advanced Infiniti ever made. Infiniti, empower the drive.
Don't miss Scott's Days at your local Ace.
Our biggest lawn and garden sale of the spring.
Right now, buy any bag of Scott's fertilizer and get a free $5 reward. Hurry in for great deals throughout the store. Now through Monday at Ace.
Ace is the place with the helpful hardware, folks.
Now that I own my first home, I'm free to do whatever I want. Paint the walls purple, or finally install a dishwasher. But I also don't want to spend every weekend doing home projects, so I use Home Advisor to get matched with background check pros who can do the exact job I need. I can use the cost guide to make sure I get a fair price, book an appointment online, and it's totally free to use. I get my projects done, and I still enjoy my weekends.
Go to homeadvisor.com or download the free app.
Home Advisor.
This is Fracture. Just upload an image, place your order, and it'll show up at your door, beautifully printed directly on glass. And this isn't just another frame, not just another canvas. This is new. This is a Fracture. Visit fractureme.com and print one today.
My car smells good. It's these new Fresh Effects car air fresheners from Armor All. Each scent can create a different mood in my car. Like tranquil skies. Armor All. It's easy to smell good.
Wayfair, you got just what I need. It's the feeling of done and done. It's so much fun. Easy as a click, and done comes quick. It can even look crazy. That's fun and done, baby. Get a deal done. My fancy looks fun. Just kick back, relax. With Wayfair, you're done. You know the feeling. Yeah, that's the one. It's the feeling of done and done. It's so much.
Bring home the feeling at wayfair.com.
1 part steak, 1 part ribs, 2 parts incredible. New steak and ribs at Outback, $15.99 for a limited time. Get a 6-ounce sirloin and make it your own with a choice of honey sriracha, barbecue or dry rub ribs. So hurry into Outback now.
You have a vision.
It's why you can see what others can't. You know what you want, and we can help you get it. You need options? We've got all kinds, including special finishes and papers. And they're all absolutely guaranteed, every time, for any reason. Because you have a vision, and we have your card. 500 start at just $9.99 when you enter BC500 at Vistaprint.com.
What is luxury? Is it the quiet of your own sunrise? Or the thunder of your footsteps? Is it the depth of your own ocean? Or the height of your own sky? Or is luxury simply the time you spend with the ones you love? With breathtaking private villas around the world, Luxury Retreats lets you focus on what truly matters while we take care of the rest. Visit luxuryretreats.com and book your private villa today.
When the world rejoices.
The most popular royal wedding in a generation.
When the world cries.
How dangerous is it if ISIS is allowed to regroup here?
When it erupts.
It gives you a sense of the kind of tension that has boiled over.
Or holds its breath.
President Trump's decision to meet with Kim Jong-un blindsided leaders.
Our journalists will be there.
So we had booked Bob Costa, national political reporter at the Washington Post tonight, as soon as we learned that Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan, was resigning. Bob Costa is one of the best sourced reporters in Washington, particularly on Capitol Hill and among House Republicans, and he's often been able to read tea leaves better than anybody else when there are sort of leadership changes happening and big political schisms afoot among Republicans in Washington. So we booked Robert Costa to talk about that because of the Paul Ryan story. And then, right before we got on the air, look at what Robert Costa just broke at the Washington Post. Do we have this to put it up there? Yeah, this has just gone up at the Washington Post website, a new scoop from Mr. Costa. Quote, Bannon pitches White House on plan to cripple Mueller. To cripple Mueller probe and protect Trump. This has just been posted by Robert Costa at the Washington Post. According to this new report, he says that Steve Bannon ousted as White House chief strategist last summer, but he's remained in touch with some members of President Trump's circle. He's now pitching a new plan to the West Wing, to West Wing aides and congressional allies to cripple the federal probe into Russian interference in the 2016 elections. According to Mr. Costa's reporting tonight, Bannon's first proposed step is to fire Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, who oversees the Mueller investigation. The second step is that the White House should cease its cooperation with Mueller, reversing the policy of Trump's legal team to allow staff members to sit for interviews. This is unusual. I guess this would be step 3, or maybe this is part of step 2. Bannon is telling people that the president should assert executive privilege in such a way that he should argue that Mueller's interviews with White House officials over the past year, the ones that have already happened, should now be seen as null and void. Executive privilege should be, quote, exerted immediately and retroactively. That's Bannon's plan. Also, one final step, Ty Cobb, the president's Russia lawyer who actually works for the White House, Ty Cobb, quote, should be fired immediately, Bannon said. So those are the steps. Fire Rosenstein, retroactively assert executive privilege and try to nullify all of the interviews that already exist, and fire Ty Cobb too. New reporting from Robert Costa, national political reporter at the Washington Post. He's also the moderator of Washington Week. Mr. Costa, congratulations on the scoop. Thank you for being here tonight.
Great to be with you, Rachel.
So let me ask you first about what you just posted at the Washington Post. Is there any sense that Bannon is pitching this through you because he believes that's his best hope of getting this acted on? Or is it your sense that this is a plan that is actively being considered?
As a reporter, I actually came to Bannon. I'd been hearing from White House sources that he was back in the mix, and he had seemed to be over in Europe preaching his brand of politics for the last few months after his political operation here pretty much fizzled. And he has been talking to people that the president needs to fire Rod Rosenstein, the Deputy Attorney General, and he's been meeting just this week on Tuesday night with White House officials, different White House aides privately, having phone conversations, conference calls, that sort of thing.
You say in your piece, legal experts are dubious about Bannon's idea that the White House could suddenly claim executive privilege on interviews that were given voluntarily by officials and be able to exclude them from an investigation. Were you able to sense from Mr. Bannon or from anybody else familiar with his plans why he believes that this is even a viable prospect for him to suggest?
It's really a political play as much as a legal strategy he's recommending, and it's important to note Mr. Bannon is not an attorney. But what you're seeing from Bannon is someone who's trying to play to the president's frustration with his legal team. The legal team, Ty Cobb and John Dowd, before he resigned, were urging cooperation. Bannon thinks that's the biggest mistake the president has made. He should never have cooperated with the Mueller probe. And he's urging people inside of the White House and close to the president to mount a more aggressive campaign and reshuffle the legal team and just stop cooperating after you reshuffle the Justice Department.
Isn't it strange, though, that Bannon, of all people, I mean, Mr. Bannon, one of the ways he made headlines was by describing Trump's earlier decision to fire James Comey as, I can't remember the exact phrase, but it was something about it being one of the worst political decisions in modern history, describing the firing of Comey as a terrible decision that might have doomed Trump's presidency. Now he's suggesting essentially the equivalent, firing Rosenstein in order to try to eliminate the special counsel's investigation. That would seem to be quite an evolution just by Mr. Bannon himself.
It's a total reversal for Bannon. He was the one who criticized Jared Kushner and others for firing FBI Director James Comey last year. Now he's the one urging political warfare. But that's where we're at with this presidency, a president who has a very limited legal team, and now it's outside advisors working their way through. Even though Bannon burned his whole relationship with the White House with that Fire and Fury book, even Bannon's coming back, whispering to people inside of the West Wing about what to do next.
Robert, let me also ask you about the huge news in Washington today that we all woke up to, that Speaker Ryan is leaving. He's not going to be running for re-election. Obviously, there had been previous reporting that had hinted at this. The Speaker's office had denied it. People had been saying that his retirement was coming. Do you have any sense of how tied this announcement was, this decision was, to Speaker Ryan's expectations for Democrats having a good midterm election and potentially taking back the House this November?
Well, Rachel, you explained it so well. I mean, when you're losing seats in southwestern Pennsylvania and in Alabama, that pretty much tells you, along with polls, about what to expect on the horizon. But the deeper question facing House Republicans I spoke to today is who's going to be their champion on the tax cut? Ryan was the person who was going to sell it. The president hasn't been out there repeatedly selling the tax cut. And without their leader in Ryan, who's really there to bring together that traditional Republican Party? But the Republican Party is so broken. There's that surface Republican Party the Speaker was talking about today, harkening back to Ronald Reagan and Jack Kemp. But those deficits you talked about, those deficits were the motivating factor supposedly for the Tea Party movement. But a decade later, what really lingers on? Not concerned about the deficit in the Republican Party. It's grievance politics, fury with the establishment.
Robert Costa, national political reporter at The Washington Post, moderator of Washington Week, and as usual, proving himself to be a scoop machine. Bob, it's nice to see you. Thank you very much for being here. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
I will say, in terms of who's going to replace Paul Ryan, a lot of discussion about that in Washington. When John Boehner stepped down as the last Republican House Speaker to step down, everybody thought that the guy who would step into those shoes would be Kevin McCarthy, the congressman from California. It once again looks like that in the wake of Paul Ryan leaving, but something happened when Boehner left, and the Republicans decided they weren't going to go with McCarthy. They skipped him and put Ryan in there instead. McCarthy's, again, set to be there, set to be the next in line. Nobody's really told the story of how come McCarthy didn't get it last time around when Boehner stepped down. We'll see if that plays itself again for a second time now that he's got a second chance at it. All right, stay with us.
On kittens, bright copper kettles and warm woolen mittens, brown paper packages tied up with strings. These are a few of my favorite things.
You thought that bandage would protect me? See the new skin over there? How could you not know it's the flexible liquid bandage? It seals out bad stuff like water and dirt. Hey, there's a spray, too.
New skin. Apply, seal, heal.
If you just sign that first
I'm
one
so
there.
sorry. I don't feel comfortable signing that.
I don't get the math here.
Was this the same car we talked about?
What's this dealer preparation fee?
I'm so sorry. This just is not
what we talked about.
Get the car with
without the car salesman. Carvana, the new way to buy a car.
The ADT yard sign stands watch over your home and family. With 140 years of tested, trusted, 24/7 protection. Now get our lowest rate for fast response monitoring at just $28.99 a month. About $1 a day. Call today.
I have asthma,
One of many pieces in my life.
so when my asthma symptoms kept coming back on my long-term control medicine, I talked to my doctor and found a missing piece in my asthma treatment with Brio.
Once daily Brio prevents asthma symptoms. Brio's for adults with asthma not well controlled on a long-term asthma control medicine, like an inhaled corticosteroid. Brio won't replace a rescue inhaler for sudden breathing problems. Brio is specifically designed to open up airways to improve breathing for a full 24 hours. Brio contains a type of medicine that increases the risk of death from asthma problems and may increase the risk of hospitalization in children and adolescents. Brio is not for people whose asthma is well controlled on a long-term asthma control medicine, like an inhaled corticosteroid. Once your asthma is well controlled, your doctor will decide if you can stop Brio and prescribe a different asthma control medicine, like an inhaled corticosteroid. Do not take Brio more than prescribed. See your doctor if your asthma does not improve or gets
Significant new news on the Mueller investigation, the Russia investigation involving the Justice Department and the FBI. Tonight, next, part 2 of that scoop. Stay with us.
America's leadership in the world came to us because
With Charmin.
Will be packed.
Handwritten notes appear to corroborate, even down to some of the exact phrases, what FBI Director James Comey told Congress about his interactions with President Trump before the president fired Comey last May. Comey told Congress, for example, that President Trump had asked him to, quote, lift the cloud of the Russia investigation. Bente's notes that we obtained appear to show Comey describing that to Bente in exactly the same way, when he phoned Bente right after he'd spoken to the president in order to make sure there would be a record of what the president had said and done. So that's one example. Comey telling Congress the president said